Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a quiet corner of history. A place where the ocean sighs softly, the stars feel unreasonably close, and one woman's almost forgotten memories drift like a bottle left floating for you to find. And honestly, if you were actually there back in 1912, you'd probably survive for about, half a day. Maybe, on a good day. But don't worry, we're just visiting in the gentlest, most sleep-friendly way possible, so no need to practice treading water. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, adjust to a comfortable sleeping position, and let's begin our journey tonight in a relaxed and pleasant way. You start by listening, really listening, to the ocean. It's late, the kind of late where your brain turns the world's volume down and every sound feels personal. The waves curl under you like they know you're here for something delicate, something whispered. Tonight, that whisper comes from the last known survivor of the Titanic. Imagine her voice, older, steadier, wrapped in the softness age gives people who've already said everything they needed to say. But there's one story left, one she never quite released into the world's hands. As you settle deeper into the night, you can almost see her sitting near a window, the kind with glass so thin it quivers when the wind hums. She's not dramatic. She doesn't claim visions or destiny. She just remembers. And memory, especially the kind that survives long enough to become the last surviving memory, hits differently. You hear her murmur about the voyage that became a myth. She's careful with her words, like she's sifting through old letters in her mind. People always ask about the sinking, she says, but they forget everything that came before it. And that's where she wants you to start. Not with the catastrophe, but with the breath before the plunge, the quiet human moments that history tends to skip because they don't fit into headlines. The crazy thing? Historians still debate whether the memories of survivors drift over time or sharpen. Turns out that even experts can't agree on whether trauma makes people forget more or remember more. Funny how the people with degrees argue while the person who lived it just says, "This is what I remember." She talks about standing on the deck as a child, her tiny hands gripping the railing like it was the most important job in the world. And you can almost feel that metal now, cool, slightly damp, the kind of surface that makes you instinctively wipe your palms afterward even though nobody told you to. She remembers faces, so many faces, some bright and excited, some carrying the kind of exhaustion you only see in people who spent years saving money for one impossible ticket that could change everything. In school, you probably heard this reduced to immigrants seeking a new life, but she remembers their shoes, worn to thin lines. She remembers their accents blending like a strange, hopeful choir. She remembers the smell of new suitcases and old clothes packed with lavender sprigs to keep away ship insects that didn't actually exist, but everyone believed in. And here's a weird little fact she laughs about. Apparently, people on board used to say you could tell where someone came from by how they held their teacup. Was it true? Maybe. Historians argue about that too. But the idea of someone judging your entire national identity by your pinky finger feels extremely on brand for the 1910s. There's a rhythm to her storytelling, slow and soothing. You follow it without meaning to. Her memories make the Titanic feel less like a doomed monument and more like a floating neighborhood. Kids chasing each other through corridors. Adults pretending they weren't concerned about the price of champagne. Third-class travelers cooking meals that made the whole lower deck smell like onions and hope. Little details history books rarely mention because they're too busy being dramatic. Then she tells you something almost nobody asked her about: the sound of the ship itself. She remembers it humming, like a deep, sleepy cat. Most ships rattled, groaned, or creaked, but the Titanic, she said, purred. The engineers insisted that was impossible. Steel doesn't purr, but she swears it did. She remembers lying in her bunk, feeling the vibration through her ribs. Like being held, she says, but by something enormous. It's the kind of detail scientists roll their eyes at, but honestly, there are worse ways to describe a 46,000-ton ship. And while she's talking, you notice something odd about the room around her. The air feels heavier, not in a spooky way, more like how a theater feels right before the curtain rises. The edges of your awareness soften. It's like she's inviting you not just to listen, but to step inside the memory with her. So you do. You imagine yourself standing beside her younger self, a tiny figure with big eyes and bigger expectations. The world smells like salt water and polished wood. Somewhere far above, someone is tuning violin strings for the evening performance. Somewhere far below, coal shovels strike the furnace with the slow predictability of a heartbeat. You sense the enormity of what's coming. But she didn't back then. To her, this was the beginning of an adventure, and she wants you to feel that. The part of the story everyone forgets. The part before fear had a name. She looks at you, in that strange, imagined space between memory and dream, and says softly, "People think they know the Titanic, but that night, the real night, there were moments nobody wrote down." And that is the story she wants to tell you. 15 chapters of moments the world almost missed. You step forward without even realizing it, carried gently by the current of her memories. The ship rises in front of you, not as a ghostly wreck, not as a tragedy still wrapped in cold mythology, but as it was on that first dazzling morning. Unapologetically huge, glamorous in a look what we built American kind of way, even though it wasn't American at all. But you know how marketing works? If something is big enough, loud enough, and shiny enough, it somehow becomes part of the American dream anyway. You tilt your head back, trying to take in its full height. Titanic doesn't just loom, it flexes. It stands there in the harbor like a celebrity posing for cover art. The hull stretches out longer than your attention span on a Monday morning, and you're suddenly aware of how small your shoes feel compared to this arrogant mountain of steel. Someone near you whistles and says, "Bigger than the Brooklyn Bridge," which is completely wrong, but you appreciate the enthusiasm. The last survivor's voice, older and warm like fading sunlight, continues in your ear. People always talked about its size. They said it was too big to fail, too well built to worry about, too modern to fear. Sounds familiar, right? It's basically the historical equivalent of clicking "I agree" on a terms of service you didn't read because what's the worst that could happen? As you walk toward the gangway, the air shifts. The smell of coal mixes with sea spray and a hint of perfume drifting off wealthier passengers. Floral, expensive, and doing its best to pretend the ocean breeze won't flatten their carefully arranged hair within minutes. You watch a man in a fancy coat comparing the ship's brochures with the actual ship, as if checking whether he received the deluxe version. Meanwhile, his wife adjusts her hat with the seriousness of someone preparing for a presidential portrait. And then there's you, feeling like you just walked into history's most overconfident real estate showing. You pass groups of passengers posing for photographs, the kind where nobody smiles because cameras still demanded more discipline than joy. A few people attempt small talk about the ship's features. Did you hear about the Turkish baths? They say there's a squash court. I brought a swimsuit just in case. Spoiler: that swimsuit will not be used. You step onto the deck, and the sheer space surprises you. It's not cramped or nautical or modest like the ships you've seen in movies. It's enormous, breezy, almost theatrical. The polished railings gleam under the morning sun. The lifeboats hang neatly above you, tucked away like props nobody plans to use. Historically speaking, yes, you know the number was insufficient. But right now, they look perfectly adequate for a ship that supposedly can't sink. It's like bringing one umbrella to a desert. Technically, not wrong. A fun little historical detail she shares. A cold, obscure one you've probably never heard. The Titanic had a designated chairman of deck chairs, an actual person, paid actual money, whose full-time job was to manage the distribution, reservation, and placement of deck chairs. Historians still debate how essential that role actually was. Was it a logistical necessity? Or just the maritime equivalent of giving someone a title because their uncle was on the board? We may never know. You wander forward, past the first-class entrances where the carpet is so plush it looks like it flushes embarrassment from your shoes. The brass handrails shine like someone polished them with pure ego. The woodwork? Devastatingly elegant, like stepping into a Victorian Pinterest board curated by someone with unlimited budget and zero restraint. But you also drift past the third-class areas, and the vibe changes immediately. The floors are simpler, the ceilings lower, the air filled with chatter from dozens of families juggling bags, kids, and dreams all at once. Their energy isn't polished. It's raw, hopeful, loud in the best way. They talk about America like it's a prize waiting for them at the end of a long hallway. The survivor's voice softens. People forget, she says, that Titanic wasn't just a luxury ship. It was a floating chance. A chance some people saved their whole lives for. She remembers being a child weaving between legs and suitcases, staring at everything with eyes unburdened by fear or expectation. She recalls seeing one family holding hands in a tight circle, whispering a prayer for good fortune, though she could never understand the words. She remembers a sailor dropping a crate and cursing quietly while trying to look professional, proof that even in 1912, humans were already experts at pretending everything was fine. One curious fact she tells you, one that's small enough to feel personal. Apparently, the ship stewards had to memorize where every lifeboat was stored, every emergency route, and every staircase. Yet most passengers managed to get lost within an hour anyway. People in 1912, you realize, were just as stubborn about not asking for directions as people today. You continue exploring, following her memory like a gentle current. You stand at the bow, feeling the wind press softly against your coat. Ahead of you lies nothing but open ocean, clean, sparkling, stretching out like a promise. You imagine the ship slicing through it effortlessly, the engines humming like a polite thunderstorm beneath your feet. She laughs when she recalls how adults try to act unimpressed. They didn't want to look like tourists, she says. Meanwhile, the children, including her, were practically vibrating with excitement. She remembers a boy who insisted he could feel the ship's heartbeat, which confused his mother deeply. But you get it. Titanic feels alive in this moment, too confident, too proud, too enormous to imagine any other fate. Historians still argue whether the prevailing belief in the ship's invincibility was genuinely widespread or just exaggerated by newspapers later. Some say everyone trusted it blindly. Others insist plenty of people were skeptical. But standing here, inside the warmth of her recollection, it feels like the whole world truly believed in this giant, floating declaration of progress. You walk along the deck until the sun dips slightly, softening the shadows. Somewhere behind you, a crewman calls out, "All ashore that's going ashore!" And the gangway begins to lift. You can feel the excitement tightening around you. The ship stretches like a waking giant, ready to start the most famous voyage in history. And in this moment, you're not thinking about destiny or tragedy or icebergs. You're thinking about how it feels to stand on something the world swore could never fail. You lean over the railing, watching the harbor slip slowly away. You're part of the story now, the big one, the one everyone thinks they know. But you're seeing it not through headlines or documentaries or dramatic retellings. You're seeing it through her eyes, through the last survivor, through the beginning. You drift downward, not physically, just the way you do in a dream, letting the last survivor's words guide you from the bright, elegant upper decks into a part of the ship that feels far more alive. The air changes first. It warms, thickens, gathers layers of stories like steam on a mirror. And before you realize it, you're standing at the edge of third class, where the floors creak more honestly and the ceiling pipes don't even pretend to be decorative. You take one step, and instantly the energy hits you. It's messy, vibrant, human in the most unfiltered way. People are squeezing luggage into spaces clearly never intended for luggage. Babies are crying exactly in the key of "Please let me off this boat." Somebody's cooking something that smells like onions and destiny. And you, yes, you, find yourself smiling because this part of the ship feels real. Less like a luxury resort and more like a neighborhood with hope stacked higher than the bunks. The last survivor's older voice hums beside you. Most people remember the grand staircase, but I remember the tiny rooms. Her tone softens with that little memory sparkle people get when they're recalling something ordinary but dear. You peek into one of the cabins. Small is an understatement. 2 bunk beds, 1 small table, luggage shoved under everything that can physically lift 2 inches. If you stretch your arms out, you can touch both walls, which is impressive, considering your wingspan in this dream memory world is probably average at best. But look closer. Someone pinned a postcard of New York above one bunk. A woman folds a shirt like she's smoothing the wrinkles out of her future. A man sharpens a pencil because he plans to write a letter home the moment the ship reaches land. These aren't just passengers, they're stories in motion. You listen to the sounds around you. Someone is tuning a small instrument, maybe a fiddle, testing out soft notes that slip into the corridor like shy fireflies. 3 children chase each other past you, zigzagging in a pattern no adult could predict or survive physically. You dodge, barely. Congratulations, you lived one more day. The survivor recalls an Irish family who shared bread with her mother, even though they didn't have much. She remembers a Swedish woman teaching kids how to count in her language. She remembers the way people swapped news, who came from where, who was traveling alone, who was trying to meet family already in America. The stories braid together like a loose, multilingual rope. And here's the quirky little detail she tells you, one almost no textbook mentions. Third-class passengers had their own designated barber, but the role wasn't for haircuts. It was more like grooming supervision. He trimmed beards, cleaned up edges, helped people look American before arrival. Historians still debate how widespread or necessary this practice actually was. Some think it was a real cultural expectation. Others think it was just White Star Line being weirdly invested in everyone's jawline. You walk deeper down the corridor, ducking beneath a pipe that looks alarmingly low. A steward hurries past carrying towels, looking both exhausted and determined. He mutters something about how third class has more towels stolen than first class has towels, which feels statistically improbable but emotionally true. A man nearby calls out, "Mind your step," right as you nearly collide with a metal food cart. On the cart, plates of stew that look surprisingly comforting considering the setting. And then you remember, this isn't a prison. Third-class meals on Titanic were actually famously decent. Better than what many immigrants had eaten on land. Fresh bread, fruit, something with potatoes every day. A small, warm blessing wrapped in ocean air. The survivor mentioned something scholars still fuss over, whether third-class passengers had more freedom of movement than people assume. Some historians argue they were strictly contained. Others say families wandered far more freely. She just chuckles and says, "Children went everywhere. Nobody could stop us." And given the speed of the 3 toddlers who nearly tackled you earlier, she's probably right. You approach a communal area where people have gathered. Someone is telling a joke in a thick accent, and even though you don't catch every word, the punchline must be universal, because everyone erupts in laughter, the kind of laughter that fills a room from the floor upward. You settle into a corner, letting the sound wash over you. The metal walls warm with the echo of voices. A man across the room starts talking about his dream of opening a bakery in Chicago. Another hopes to find work on the railroads. A young woman clutches a small book of poetry, whispering lines under her breath. Everyone here has a plan, a wish, a version of themselves they're trying to meet on the other side of the Atlantic. That's something the survivor wants you to understand. The Titanic wasn't just a luxury liner. It was a vessel full of futures. Entire families had sold everything just to stand in this cramped room with too few blankets and too much optimism. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the room settle. You can almost feel the wooden bench beneath you, the subtle sway of the ship as it pushes through the Atlantic. It's like you're being rocked. Not dramatically, just enough to remind you that the ocean is part of the story too. And then you notice the girl, the younger version of the last survivor, small, quiet, sitting on her bunk with her legs tucked in. She watches everyone with wide, attentive eyes, not scared, not overwhelmed, just absorbing every detail like her mind knows somehow that she will carry these moments longer than anyone else. She notices you, gives you a tiny nod, not an invitation, more like acknowledgement. You exhale slowly. You're part of this memory now. You feel the humanity of it, the noise, the warmth, the hope, the clutter, the smell of stew, the dreams stitched into every conversation, a floating village, a crowded storybook, a chorus of journeys just beginning. And somewhere, deep in the ship, the engines continue their steady hum, purring just like she said, a promise, a warning, a heartbeat in steel. You move upward again, guided not by stairs, but by the soft pull of memory itself, like someone gently lifting the corner of a curtain to reveal the next scene. The air sharpens a little as you climb back toward the open deck. It's cooler here, thinner, edged with a breeze that feels like it came from a story still deciding what it wants to be. You step onto the wooden planks, and the Atlantic greets you with that calm, endless blue it loves to show off when it's pretending to be harmless. The sun hangs low, the warmth fading like an old lantern winding down. Passengers stroll past you, some enjoying the view, some complaining about the breeze being too impolite, because apparently even wind needed manners in 1912. And then the survivor's voice returns, soft but steady. It wasn't the cold that scared people first. It was the warnings. You pause, letting the weight of that settle. Ice warnings, plural. You lean against the railing, looking out toward a horizon that seems too peaceful to bother anyone. And yet, somewhere out there, unseen, unbothered, drifting with the quiet confidence of something that has all the time in the world, are icebergs. The first officer walks past holding a message slip. Not panicked, not even hurried. More like someone delivering a memo about Tuesday lunch options. A wireless operator follows, shaking his head with the resigned exhaustion of someone whose job involves listening to more messages than anyone should in one lifetime. Here's a fun historical footnote. Even though Titanic had incredibly advanced wireless equipment for the time, most of the messages the operators focused on were personal telegrams from passengers, people sending wish you were here notes and early versions of humble brag vacation updates. The ice warnings, often pushed aside like spam emails. Historians still debate whether this was systemic negligence or just human nature at its finest. You drift closer to the wireless room door, hearing faint Morse code tapping, quick, precise, rhythmic. It has the same energy as someone typing furiously to meet a deadline. You imagine the operator thinking, if one more passenger wants to send a message about the size of the squash court, I swear. Another officer receives a second ice warning. He pockets it casually, and you can almost hear history clearing its throat awkwardly in the background. The survivor whispers, the grown-ups didn't panic. That made the children calm. You can picture her younger self leaning against her mother's skirt, listening to adults confidently misfile the universe's polite attempts to get their attention. You walk toward the bow, and the wind picks up enough to brush your hair into a shape you did not authorize. Passengers fuss with hats, scarves, coats. You just accept it, because the Atlantic doesn't negotiate. As you stand there, someone nearby mentions seeing a piece of ice drift by earlier, no bigger than a dinner plate. Another claims to have seen something that looked like a seal doing absolutely nothing helpful, but neither seems concerned, because the logic goes, if the ship is unsinkable, then the ocean is basically scenery. You know better. The last survivor knows better. But right now, in this chapter of the memory, ignorance is warm and gentle. She shares a strange little detail you wouldn't find in many documentaries. Some passengers believed the farther north the ship traveled, the fresher the air would be. They genuinely thought icy air was good for the lungs. Historians still debate where this belief originated: medical advice, superstition, or just good old-fashioned optimism. But here people are, strolling around like the North Atlantic is an open-air spa. You continue along the deck as the wind whispers a faint promise of nightfall. The sun dips lower, staining the clouds a soft peach color. From somewhere above, a steward calls down, "Lovely evening ahead," which, in hindsight, deserves an award for most unintentionally ironic statement of 1912. You catch snippets of conversations as you walk, a couple debating dinner wine choices, a man bragging about engine horsepower, a woman reading aloud from a travel guide that confidently states, "Icebergs are seldom encountered in shipping lanes this time of year." Textbook confidence. Gloriously wrong. The ship gives a gentle shudder, not alarming, just the kind that reminds you it's alive beneath your feet. That supposed purr again. You close your eyes and feel it hum through the railing, a vibration steady enough to lull anyone into a false sense of security. The survivor speaks quietly. "I remember the sky feeling too clear, like it was holding its breath." You look up. She's right. The sky is unnervingly perfect. No clouds, no haze, no distractions. The kind of clarity that reveals more stars than your brain can properly process at once. It's beautiful. Too beautiful. A bit like the ocean dressing up before revealing something important. And then you hear it. Not a sound, more the absence of it. A subtle shift in atmosphere. A hush. Like the entire ship instinctively knows something is coming, but no one can name it yet. You sense passengers looking at one another, with that faint, inexplicable feeling of unease humans get when the world is too quiet. But still, nobody truly listens to the warnings. You rest your hands on the railing, feeling the cold metal, watching the waves turn darker as dusk deepens. Somewhere behind you, someone laughs at a joke. Somewhere below, plates clatter as dinner is prepared. Somewhere inside the ship, wireless operators tap out messages that should have been taken more seriously. And somewhere out there in the darkening blue, a shape floats silently, waiting, unbothered by human schedules or overconfidence. You breathe in slowly. The survivor's voice curls around you like a soft blanket. "This was the last peaceful evening," she murmurs, "and no one knew." The ship sails on, calm, bright, unwarned. You let the soft pull of memory guide you again, and the light changes before your feet do. The brightness of afternoon melts into the mellow gold of early evening, and suddenly, you're standing in the kind of twilight that feels like it's trying really hard to be romantic. The ship seems quieter now, not silent, just softer, like someone turned the world's volume knob halfway down so your thoughts could breathe a little. The survivor's voice settles beside you, warm and steady. People always ask about the sinking. They rarely ask about the night before. You look around, and she's right. This moment, this strange hush right before everything becomes history, is usually skipped over in favor of the dramatic part. But tonight, you're here. You get to linger in it. You walk along the deck, hands brushing the railing, and notice the wood feels warmer than it should. The day's sun is still clinging to it like a memory that refuses to let go. The sky above you fades into deepening blue, each minute pulling one more star out of hiding. Passengers stroll lazily, their silhouettes stretching across the deck like long, unbothered shadows. Someone nearby laughs, a soft, unhurried laugh that makes you think of porch swings and summer nights. A man leans against the railing with a cigar, bragging about his business back home. A pair of children race each other in circles until their caretaker pretends to scold them. Even the ocean seems to be on its best behavior, smoothing itself out into glassy sheets. You take in the moment. It's peaceful, suspiciously peaceful. The kind of peace that would absolutely get you jump scared in a movie, but don't worry, nothing like that here. This is a sleep story, remember? Nobody's leaping out of anywhere. The survivor's younger self drifts into your mind, a child peeking over the railing, her hair ruffling in the wind, her small fingers gripping the wood as if she could hold the whole sky still. It felt like the ship was floating on a lake, she recalls. No waves, no rocking, just stillness. Historically, this wasn't an exaggeration. That night was famously calm, so calm that sailors later said it felt unnatural. And of course, historians still argue about whether perfectly calm seas made the iceberg harder to spot, or whether it was mainly the moonless sky. You'd think people who study this stuff would eventually agree on one thing. But no, they debate it like it's the season finale of a show nobody wants spoiled. You wander toward the promenade, where windows glow warm from the dining rooms inside. You glimpse polished tables, flickering lamps, and people finishing dessert. A string quartet plays somewhere, their music drifting up like fine threads of sound that wrap around you softly. You're not sure what song it is, but it has that comforting, sleepy elegance that makes you want to sit down and slowly forget your responsibilities. You take a seat on a deck chair. Yes, one presumably managed by the chairman of deck chairs, whose job you still find delightfully unnecessary, and let the world settle around you. A small breeze brushes your cheek. It isn't cold yet, just crisp enough to remind you you're in the middle of the ocean, even if the ship has been doing everything in its power to behave like a floating hotel lobby. Then something shifts, subtle, so subtle you almost miss it. Not a sound, more a feeling, like the entire ship takes a slow breath in, holds it, then exhales. You sit up slightly, not alarmed, just curious. The survivor says, "I noticed it too. Kids notice everything adults ignore." You smile at that, because she's right. A man passing by glances at the sky and murmurs something about the air feeling far too still. His wife waves him off with a gentle laugh. People in this era were very committed to appearing unbothered, even when bothered. You stroll to the forward deck, where a few passengers cluster quietly, watching the horizon. Someone points upward. You follow their gaze. The stars. You've seen stars before, but not like this. These are bright, sharp, numerous, in a way that makes you feel like the universe unscrewed its ceiling tiles just to peek in on you tonight. Without clouds or moonlight, the sky looks bottomless, infinite, almost too big to fit inside your chest. A young couple stands nearby, arms brushing but not quite touching. The woman says, "It feels like the world paused for us." He nods like he fully intends to pretend he thought of that line first. You look down at the water, expecting to see the tiny waves reflecting starlight. But the sea is incredibly smooth, so smooth it feels unreal, like a sheet of black glass stretching miles in every direction. She was right. It does feel like a lake. You take a slow breath. Nothing is wrong, and yet everything feels attentive, as if the night itself is listening. Another fun detail the survivor shares. Apparently on that evening, several passengers remarked on how unusually warm the breeze felt for the North Atlantic. Some even joked that it felt like a summer night. Historians still debate what this meant. Temperature anomaly? Just people wearing too many layers? A trick of perception? The arguments continue, as always. You stay on the deck as the ship's lights blink softly against the sky. You hear distant piano notes, a steward's footsteps, someone telling a quiet joke that makes another person snort in laughter. The warm, unpolished kind you only hear when someone is truly relaxed. This is the last night the Titanic will ever look like this. Alive, glowing, peaceful, unaware. But you don't feel dread. Not here. Not now. You feel gratitude for being allowed into this quiet chapter. For hearing her remember not just what happened, but what it felt like. You look to your left and notice the younger version of her again, sitting on the deck floor, hugging her knees, resting her cheek against the railing as she watches the lights shimmering on the water. She's not thinking about danger. She's thinking about adventure, about mourning, about everything ahead of her. You sit beside her for a moment, even if it's only in this gentle memory world. The air hums faintly. A sense of calm settles over you like soft wool. The night folds you in. The ship sails on, and history holds its breath. Morning returns slowly, like a traveler who slept longer than planned and now walks with soft, apologetic footsteps across the sky. The world brightens from the edges inward, and the ship wakes with the gentle rhythm of people stretching, yawning, and remembering who they are again. But today, something feels different. Not wrong. Just different in the way you feel when you wake from a dream so vivid it clings to you like mist, even though you can't quite explain why. You follow the survivor's memory down the long corridor leading toward the dining saloon. The floor vibrates faintly beneath your feet, barely noticeable, just the quiet heartbeat of the engines working far below. After that strange, calm night, she says, the morning felt expectant. You open one of the heavy doors, and a chorus of smells greets you. Coffee, warm bread, polished wood warmed by early sunlight. People gather around tables in clusters, families, couples, strangers, who accidentally became breakfast companions because they sat too close yesterday and now feel socially obligated to repeat it. You choose a seat by the window. Sunlight spills across the table in a perfect golden stripe, the kind that makes everything look like it was brushed with honey. Outside, the water gleams. Yesterday's eerie stillness is gone. The sea has returned to its small, reassuring ripples. The young survivor, her childhood self, sits beside you again, wearing a ribbon that refuses to stay tied in her hair. She swings her feet and peers out the window, whispering, "It's colder today." She's right. Even indoors, you sense a crispness slipping through the ship's seams, a reminder that the Titanic is pushing farther north into colder waters where ice likes to roam freely, sometimes politely, sometimes not. But today, everyone seems too cheerful to care. A group of passengers at the next table swap travel plans for when they reach New York. A woman describes the city as if it's a lighthouse made of noise and ambition, bright, loud, overflowing with possibility. Her husband nods. pretending he hasn't already heard this speech 12 times. You let that sink in. There are moments in life when everything feels so stable, so predictable, that it never occurs to anyone to imagine anything else. This morning aboard the Titanic was one of those moments. You finish breakfast to the clinking of silverware and the rustling of newspapers. One man loudly complains about a chess game he lost the night before, insisting his opponent used psychological trickery. Another man, reading a London paper, mutters about an article predicting unusually cold conditions in the North Atlantic this time of year. No one listens, not even his wife. You step back outside onto the deck. The air is sharp, cold enough to nip your nose, but not unfriendly. Passengers gather in small groups, their breath faintly misting. Someone jokes that the breeze is brisk enough to remind you you're alive. A woman nearby pulls her shawl tighter and mutters that she already knew that. Thank you very much. Crew members move briskly, their routines confident, practiced. A sailor adjusts a rope coil. A steward sweeps an already clean patch of deck, probably because it's easier than making conversation with the chatty gentleman leaning nearby. Then you notice something. Up ahead, 2 officers standing near the starboard rail, discussing something with serious but not alarmed expressions. Their conversation is low, threaded with the kind of professional focus that keeps ships like this running. The survivor's voice whispers. That morning, they were already receiving ice warnings. You feel a small weight settle on the air. Not fear, just the awareness of something large and quiet entering the story. You walk closer. You can't hear all the words, just fragments carried on the breeze. Reported several bergs. Visibility should be decent. Keep the course for now. They speak calmly, professionally. There's no urgency. Ice is a common guest in these waters, especially in April. There's no reason for alarm, but the girl beside you watches them a little too intently. Children pick up vibes long before adults admit they exist. She wraps her arms around herself. The air changed, she whispers, like the ocean was thinking. You stay on deck a moment longer. The cold deepens, nibbling through your sleeves. Passengers begin drifting back inside, seeking warmth in lounges and smoking rooms. You follow the girl to the promenade deck, her favorite place, and look out across the horizon. Far in the distance, the light glints off something pale. Not a shape, not an iceberg, just a suggestion of brightness flashing between waves, gone before you can focus. You blink. It doesn't return. The girl tilts her head. Did you see it? You open your mouth to answer, but she shakes her head gently, almost amused. It's okay if you didn't. Sometimes the sea shows things only once. You continue walking, letting the morning unfold around you. The ship hums softly, slicing through the water with confidence born from its size, its design, its reputation. Every passenger you pass carries the same simple expectation. The day will be ordinary. You know, of course, that it won't be. But this is not the moment for fear. This chapter belongs to the quiet hours, when life feels predictable, safe, almost cozy. The ship sails on, and somewhere ahead, the first threads of destiny begin to tremble. The afternoon settles in slowly, draping itself over the ship like a warm blanket you'd pull over your shoulders when you're trying to ignore the fact that your coffee is getting cold. You walk the promenade again, listening to the rhythm of footsteps, the rustle of newspapers, the soft conversations weaving in and out like threads of a half-finished tapestry. Everything feels normal, or at least normal enough that you don't question the faint shiver of cold still trailing in the air. The young survivor, younger than memory usually allows, walks beside you. Her ribbon has come loose again, doing its best impression of a rebellious flag. She holds a small biscuit in her hands, nibbling it in that slow, distracted way kids do when their mind is on something else. "Do you hear it?" she murmurs. You pause. "Hear what?" She points toward the deck planks beneath your feet. "The water. It's louder today." You listen. At first, nothing. Just the hum of engines and the distant thrum of life aboard the Titanic. But then faintly, like a whisper through wood, you pick up a new sound. A soft, rhythmic sloshing. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. Just present. You shrug it off. Many passengers do. But children notice subtle changes the way cats sense thunderstorms before the sky even thinks about darkening. You continue your stroll, letting the afternoon unfold. A group of men play shuffleboard with the seriousness of diplomats negotiating a treaty. A woman laughs at something her companion says, too loudly, the kind of laugh that makes everyone around silently agree that she's absolutely trying to impress someone. But under the light chatter, something else flickers. A man in a thick coat rubs his hands together and mutters, "Feels colder than it should." Another claims he saw a patch of unusually dark water ahead, though maritime historians still debate what that might have meant. Some say it was calm seas reflecting oddly. Others think it could have been the invisible shadow of ice drifting nearby. To this day, the arguments continue in circles tighter than the ship's turning radius. You find yourself near the grand staircase. Its elegance is familiar now, almost comforting. You rest your hand lightly on the polished banister. It's cool to the touch. Too cool, maybe. But again, you let it go. You join the girl as she wanders toward the lower decks, humming a tune. Down here, the air is different. Humid, metallic. Carried on the breeze is the echo of machinery. Steady, dependable, like a giant breathing in the depths. Then you feel it. A tremor. Not a jolt. Not even a shake. Just a tiny, almost polite vibration that rolls through the soles of your shoes like the ship clearing its throat. You pause. The girl freezes, eyes wide, not with fear, but with alertness. "That," she whispers, "wasn't normal." A passing steward dismisses it with a cheerful shrug. "Just the engines," he says. "Old ships, new ships. Every one of them has a mood." You want to believe him. Everyone wants to believe him. But something in the girl's expression holds your attention. You climb back up to the deck as a thin veil of evening begins stretching across the sky. Clouds drift lazily above, tinged with faint pink, like the world hasn't yet decided what kind of night it wants to be. Passengers lean against rails, bundled a little tighter. Someone jokes that the breeze feels like it escaped from an icebox. No one laughs very hard. Then, another sound. This time, it's unmistakable. A clank, a rush, a distant metallic thud. Not violent, not frightening, just wrong. You walk toward the source. Crew members move with subtle urgency now, shoulders tighter, strides longer, voices lower. They aren't panicking. Professionals rarely do. But the energy has shifted. The way the air changes right before a teacher says, "We need to have a serious chat." The girl stands beside you, clutching your sleeve. "It's starting," she says softly. You wait for her to explain, but she simply looks toward the bow with an expression too old for her small face. Children of disaster grow up in seconds, long before adults realize anything is happening. Moments later, A whisper spreads through the crowd. "Did you feel that? I think something hit." No, must be machinery. Maybe we slowed down." Nothing confirmed, nothing denied. The ship's engines hum on, steady but subdued, like someone turned the volume down without warning. You follow the murmurs toward the railing and peer over the edge. From here, the sea looks dark and calm, smooth as spilled ink. It's beautiful, but there's a weight to it now, a quiet heaviness, like the ocean has just swallowed a secret. A woman beside you frowns at the surface. "Strange," she murmurs. "Why does the water sound closer?" And she's right, it does. The lapping sound is sharper now, more insistent, almost impatient. Inside the ship, voices shift. Crew members speak in quick, efficient tones. Someone mentions checking compartments. Another references a report from below. The details are soft, scattered, easily dismissed if you're not listening closely. But you are, because the girl tugs your hand gently and points toward a stairwell leading down. "Water," she says. You hesitate. She nods once, solemnly. You take a step downward, then another. The air cools sharply as you descend. Somewhere in the distance, boots splash, only lightly but unmistakably. A crewman dashes past with a lantern, his jaw set, eyes focused ahead. Another tremor rolls beneath your feet, not larger, just inevitable. The girl whispers, "When water starts rising, people change, even before they know why." And she's right. You can feel it already, something shifting in the atmosphere above and below deck. Conversations grow shorter, laughter thins out. People sense a disturbance without understanding it. You climb back up to the main deck, where the horizon is fading into deeper blues. The ship feels different now, still grand, still powerful, but carrying a tension that wraps around you like a cold thread. You stand there a long moment, watching your breath form faint clouds in the crisp air. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just the first small fracture in a story that still pretends it's whole. Evening slides over the ship like a velvet curtain. Soft, slow, and almost too gentle for what's coming next. The air sharpens again, cold enough to slip under your collar like a mischievous hand, reminding you that the North Atlantic has never once cared about your comfort. You can feel the tension now, not loud, not dramatic, just present, like a quiet note held too long in a song. Passengers drift along the deck, rubbing their arms, glancing around with faint confusion. No one knows anything for certain, but everyone senses that something in the rhythm of the Titanic has shifted a half beat off. And that's when you hear it. Please move quickly, but stay calm. A simple instruction, polite even, but it carries the kind of weight that makes you straighten instinctively, as if your body recognizes danger before your mind will admit it. A crew member moves down the line of passengers, his voice steady and too friendly to be natural. You'll want to put on your life belts. Just a precaution, purely routine. Routine, yes. If routine means the kind of thing they include in the manual, but hope they never have to actually do. You follow the young survivor, still in her childhood shape, back into the corridor to fetch your life belt. The hallway buzzes with people doing the exact same thing, some calm, some confused, some performing the most American behavior of all, confidently explaining everything with zero actual information. One man insists the ship hit a floating crate. Another claims it was a whale with attitude. A woman swears she heard the captain say, "We'll be on our way in 10 minutes." None of that is true, of course. but it's astonishing how fast humans generate theories when facts are shy. You grab your life belt. The thing feels stiff and awkward, like someone designed it specifically to make you question every life choice that led you here. As you tie the straps, the girl watches you with enormous, steady eyes. "It's starting to get loud downstairs," she whispers. You pause. "Loud how?" She frowns. "Loud like water." Somewhere behind you, a door slams. Footsteps rush past. Another crew member calls for passengers to gather on deck. You step outside again into the cold, where clusters of people have begun forming near the lifeboats. The davits creak as crews begin swinging the boats out. A sound that is somehow both reassuring and terrifying. And here's the part history sometimes glosses over. Humans don't form neat, orderly lines during emergencies. They form opinions. A man in a thick coat demands to know why they're lowering boats at all if the ship is just fine. He insists this is overreaction at its finest. A woman beside him disagrees loudly. She claims she heard water rushing in the lower decks and is already rehearsing a dramatic recounting for future dinner parties. You step closer to the lifeboat station. Officers call out numbers, steady and efficient. The rule is clear. Women and children first. But the moment those words echo into the air, something subtle shifts. People don't panic, not openly. They reorganize themselves, mentally and physically. Some step back, some step forward. Some pretend they didn't hear it at all. And then comes the strange part, the part the survivor always recalled with a mix of sadness and bewilderment. Many lifeboats aren't full. Passengers hesitate. They're unsure whether the situation is serious enough. Some don't want to leave the warm, bright decks for tiny wooden boats bobbing in the freezing dark. Others insist the ship is far safer than the sea, and some simply can't comprehend that the unsinkable ship might actually be sinking. You watch as an officer tries, politely, to convince people to climb aboard. "There's space, ma'am. Please step in." The woman hesitates. "But my husband, we'll take care of him. You'll see him again in New York." That line becomes practically the catchphrase of the night, a comforting promise no one can guarantee. The girl tugs your sleeve. "We should move," she says softly. "People are starting to argue." And they are. Not violently, but in that strained, polite way humans argue when they're scared. A man insists he bought a first-class ticket and therefore deserves a spot. Another counters that everyone deserves survival, not priority boarding. Someone else mutters that if this were a train, the situation would be sorted by now. No one knows why he chose to compare a sinking ship to a train, but stress does strange things to metaphors. You hear a scholar-like gentleman near the rail explaining, very confidently, that large ships simply cannot sink from side damage because of their watertight compartments. He emphasizes this with a series of hand gestures that would make excellent dance moves if the situation were less dire. Ironically, historians still debate whether misinformation, pride, or simple disbelief caused the lifeboats to launch with so many empty seats. Some say passengers genuinely thought the ship was safer. Others argue they lacked urgency because the damage felt small, almost trivial at first. The debates continue to this day, like academic ping pong. The officer calls out again, "Women and children, step forward." This time, people begin listening. You follow the girl toward a lifeboat as she clutches her small coat tighter, her breath forming little clouds. Her eyes search for something, someone, but she says nothing. The wood of the lifeboat creaks as more passengers step in. A woman holds her child close, whispering a steady stream of comfort that sounds more like a prayer disguised as nursery rhyme. A man tries to lighten the mood by saying the ocean air is refreshing, which earns him 2 polite nods and 1 very unimpressed look. The young survivor stands beside you, tiny hands gripping the rail. She inhales slowly, then whispers, "This is the moment everything changes." And she's right. You can feel it in the air, the combination of fear, disbelief, hope, and urgency blending into something indescribable. The ropes strain. The officers shout final instructions. The deck groans under shifting feet. And for the first time tonight, the ship begins to feel less like a home and more like a memory you're still standing inside. Night has deepened into one of those impossibly clear North Atlantic nights. The kind you'd admire if you weren't currently in a small wooden boat dangling several stories above the ocean, while a giant steel ship tilts ever so slightly behind you. The air has teeth now. Cold, sharp, determined. Your breath leaves in pale clouds as the officers make their final checks. The ropes creak like old bones, and the wood beneath your feet shivers with every movement of the people around you. The girl, the young survivor, sits close, her small fingers wrapped around your sleeve as if anchoring herself to the moment. Above you, the Titanic looms, a glowing palace against the dark sky. Its lights shine warm and steady, refusing to acknowledge the trouble brewing below its waterline. From this angle, it doesn't look like a ship in danger. It looks like a floating city, too proud to admit anything could be wrong. A woman whispers behind you, "Surely we'll be back on board soon." Another nods, her voice trembling. "They'll fix it. They always fix things." You can't fault them. When a place feels so big, so strong, it's hard to imagine it breaking. The officer raises his hand. "Lower away." The ropes groan and the lifeboat dips abruptly, making your stomach float up toward your ribs. You grip the edge, your knuckles turning so white they could glow in the dark. The boat drops again, smoother this time, swinging gently as the cold wind wraps around you. The girl squeezes your hand. "It's okay," she whispers. You have no idea whether she believes that. From above, voices drift down, the last-minute shouts of people reconsidering everything, calling out names, asking questions that will never be answered fully. Then, another drop. Your heart stumbles. You try not to think about the fact that the lifeboat ropes have probably never been used in a real emergency before. You try not to think about the fact that the sea below looks like a solid black mirror, waiting to swallow sound. And then it happens. The sea rises up to meet you with a soft, icy splash. You've touched the North Atlantic. The moment the boat hits the water, the temperature sinks straight through your boots like a warning. The lifeboat rocks, adjusting to the bobbing rhythm. You hold your breath. The girl buries her face in your coat for a second, then peeks out, eyes wide, scared, but strangely steady. All around you, the ocean stretches endlessly, quiet as a held breath. But above, the Titanic still glows. Its lights shimmer against the sky, reflecting off the water like scattered pieces of a broken chandelier. You can see silhouettes leaning over the rails. You can hear faint echoes of conversation, confusion, denial. A man in your lifeboat murmurs, awe softening his voice. "Look at her. She doesn't even look hurt." And he's right. From here you can't see the damage. You can't see the water creeping through compartments. You can't see the tilt unless you really study it. She looks almost peaceful, too peaceful, like a painting pretending to be real. The girl nudges you and points upward. Look at the sky. You do. And good grief, it's breathtaking. The stars are everywhere. Brighter than street lamps, brighter than city lights, brighter than anything you've seen in a world without electricity nearby. They spill across the heavens like a scatter of diamonds someone threw in a moment of carelessness. Constellations stretch overhead, Orion, Cassiopeia, the Pleiades, shining with the calm indifference of celestial beings who have seen thousands of nights like this. Someone whispers, "It's beautiful." Someone else whispers, "Too beautiful." A historian once argued, still argues in fact, that the unusually clear and moonless sky contributed to the lookout's difficulty in spotting icebergs. Without moonlight reflecting off their surfaces, the ice blended into the horizon. Other scholars dispute this, insisting atmospheric conditions played a larger role. The debate continues like a polite academic slap fight. Your lifeboat drifts farther from the ship, carried by oar strokes and currents. The Titanic grows smaller, not yet truly small, but shrinking just enough to make your chest tighten. The girl leans against you. "I remember thinking the stars were trying to help us," she says, like they were keeping us company. Someone in the boat begins humming softly. A lullaby? A hymn? It's impossible to tell, but the sound is warm in the cold darkness. A few passengers join in, their shaky voices layering over one another like thin blankets. Behind you, the Titanic's lights flicker, not dangerously, just faintly. Enough to remind you that electricity is a mortal thing, not a promise. A man clears his throat. Should we go back and help more? His question hangs in the air, delicate as frost. An older woman answers before anyone else can. If we go back now, we'll be pulled under if the ship goes. Another passenger adds, or swarmed by people. Too many to save. The argument has no correct answer, and everyone knows it. History still debates it. Who should have gone back? Who could have gone back? Who made the right decision? Scholars discuss ethics, physics, probability. None of it changes the weight of this moment. You sit there in silence as the debate dies out, replaced by gentle oar strokes and the rhythmic lap of water against the hull. The girl looks up at you. "Do you hear it?" she asks. At first, nothing. Then you do. A faint, distant sound. Voices, movement. A kind of muffled thrum that doesn't match the peaceful sky. "The chaos is starting," she whispers. And yet, above it all, the stars shine with complete serenity, as though the universe is humming softly to calm you, pretending everything is fine. You wrap your arms tighter around yourself as the lifeboat drifts farther into the dark, the Titanic glowing like a floating lantern, beautiful, doomed, and impossibly far away already. The night deepens, the sea shifts, and for the first time, you understand just how alone small boats can feel in an ocean this wide. The lifeboat rocks gently beneath you, as if trying to lull everyone into a false sense of comfort. You almost want to let it. The air is numbingly cold, the sea impossibly dark, and yet, somehow, the tiny boat feels like an island of fragile peace in the middle of an unfolding tragedy. The young survivor sits pressed against your side, wrapped in a coat that's slightly too big for her. She looks out toward the distant glow of the Titanic, her small face illuminated by its golden light. "You know," she whispers, "I didn't understand anything that night." You turn to her. She continues quietly, "I only remember how everything felt. Not the facts, not the danger, just the feelings. And suddenly you're not just listening, you're inside her memory. You see the night through her eyes, the stars that looked like spilled glitter, the lifeboat ropes that creaked like old tree branches, the grown-ups whose voices kept trying to sound brave even when their hands wouldn't stop shaking. She fiddles with her ribbon, the one that won't stay tied, then points to a woman across the boat. See her? She gave me a candy earlier to keep me calm. The woman waves gently when she notices you both looking. You wave back, even though your fingers are frozen stiff. She mouths, "You're doing great," the universal adult message for, I have no idea what's happening, but pretending confidence is all I've got. Children aboard the Titanic didn't have the luxury of understanding. Their memories became patchworks, smells, colors, tones of voice. The young survivor explains that for years, she carried only fragments: a dropped glove, a man shouting something she couldn't decipher, the cold that bit her cheeks like angry snowflakes. History books rarely capture this part of the night, but child psychologists later pointed out something fascinating. Children in crises often remember sensations, not events. Scholars still discuss this, debating whether emotional memory or narrative memory shapes these early accounts. The argument goes in circles, like someone trying to paddle a lifeboat with one oar. The girl curls her knees up and leans her head on them. I remember feeling sorry for the stars, she says. You blink. Sorry? Why? Because they had to watch everything, and they couldn't help. It's such a childlike way to understand helplessness that your chest aches. Around you, the lifeboat continues drifting. Passengers speak in soft murmurs, some praying, some whispering names, some sitting in stunned silence. A man nearby points toward the ship. Look, he says quietly. She's dipping lower, and she is. From here, the Titanic no longer looks steady. The bow sinks ever so slightly into the dark water, just a few degrees, but enough to make your stomach twist. The girl watches too, but not with fear, more like confusion. That doesn't look right, she says, tilting her head like a curious bird. A woman puts an arm around her shoulders. They'll fix it, she whispers. They've got the best crew in the world. The girl nods because she's polite, not because she believes it. She shifts again, pulling something from her pocket. A tiny cloth doll with a crooked smile. She came with me everywhere, she says, even when the grown-ups said I'd lose her. She pauses, but I held on, tight. You smile at her determination. The doll is simple: 2 button eyes, a thread mouth, and hair made of thick black yarn, but in her small hands, it looks like the anchor of her world. You know what I remember most? She asks suddenly. What? Everyone kept telling me not to worry, but they looked worried. That's the strange duality of catastrophes. Adults try so hard to protect children from fear that the effort becomes its own kind of alarm. You look around the lifeboat. A man is wringing his hat in his hands. A woman keeps glancing toward the Titanic as if willing it to lift itself back up. Someone whispers that the engines have stopped. The girl notices everything. I thought the ship was sad, she murmurs. You tilt your head. Sad? Yes. Ships usually hum or vibrate a little, but she went quiet. Too quiet. And she's right. The Titanic's engines are silent now. No thrum, no pulse, no warmth. Just stillness. Children perceive silence differently than adults do. To them, quiet is suspicious. An absence of sound feels like something hiding. Some historians argue that survivors' later recollections of strange quiet were exaggerated by hindsight, while others believe children's memories captured an emotional truth adults missed. The debate remains unresolved. Your boat drifts farther into the dark. The girl squints toward the stars again. They're brighter now. They are. The darker the sea, the more the sky blazes. And that's when you realize something. This chapter, the child's memory, is not about facts, not about the angle of the bow, or the technicalities of the flooding, or the decisions made on deck. It's about the smallest witness, with the clearest view of human fear and fragile hope. You look back at the girl. She hugs her doll close. "Will we be okay?" she asks. You hesitate, longer than you mean to. Then you nod. "Yeah," you whisper. "We'll be okay." She studies your face for a moment, weighing your answer the way only children do, measuring your eyes, not your words. "Good," she whispers finally, "because I'm tired." And she leans against you, trusting you with a child's simple, devastating faith. Around you, the ocean sighs. Above you, the stars burn silently. Behind you, the Titanic continues to fade, beautiful and wounded. And here, in this tiny lifeboat, a child closes her eyes and begins to dream while history keeps unfolding around her. The sky has shifted. Hours have passed. Not many, but enough that time feels distorted, stretched thin like wet paper. Dawn is still far away, yet the black velvet sky has begun to pale into the faintest shade of cobalt. The lifeboats drift silently across the Atlantic, each one a tiny fragment of survival floating in an ocean that has swallowed so much. You hear oars splashing softly somewhere nearby, though you can't tell which boat they belong to. Voices drift over the water, thin, fragile threads of sound connecting the survivors like distant lanterns. But your attention is pulled to the girl beside you. She is still asleep, curled against your arm, her breath warm despite the cold. You adjust your coat to cover her shoulders better. She doesn't stir. Everything around you has quieted into a strange stillness. Not peace. Nothing about this night is peaceful, but the kind of heavy hush that settles after chaos when exhaustion pulls even fear into silence. You look toward the Titanic. What remains of her is almost unrecognizable now. The bow has disappeared completely beneath the waves. The stern rises so high, it looks like a cathedral lifting into the sky. The angle is wrong, grotesque, a shape the ship was never meant to form. But it stands all the same, towering in the darkness like a monument to human ambition and human error. A man in your lifeboat crosses himself. A woman begins to sob quietly. Another stares, unable to look away. No matter how many accounts you've read, no matter how many documentaries you've seen, nothing prepares you for the visceral reality of the moment. Even your breathing falters, as if your body knows it is witnessing something that will echo across history. Suddenly, the young girl stirs. She lifts her head, blinking, still half asleep. "Is it morning?" she asks softly. You shake your head. "Not yet." She rubs her eyes. Then she follows your gaze and freezes. The Titanic, glowing faintly in the moonlight, is rising higher, the stern lifting like a giant exhaling its last breath. "Oh," she says in a voice so small it nearly vanishes. You want to shield her eyes. You want to bring her back into sleep. But she keeps staring, lips parted, as if she knows, instinctively, that this is a memory she cannot outrun. All around the sea, other boats fall silent too. Later testimonies would note this moment, the breathless pause before the end, a vast basin of water holding thousands of people in one shared, impossible suspense. A faint creaking echoes across the water. It is distant, but unmistakable, the sound of metal under unbearable strain. The girl grabs your sleeve. What's happening? You choose your words carefully. She's breaking apart. She doesn't fully understand, but she understands enough. Her fingers tighten. Then the sound comes, sharp, thunderous, final. A crack like the world itself splitting open. The Titanic's spine gives way. The ship breaks. Gasps ripple through the boats. Someone cries out. Someone else covers their ears. The girl buries her face against your side. You hold her, though your own hands are shaking. The stern wavers for a moment, still towering, still defiant, before gravity claims it. It begins to slide downward, slowly at first, like a giant sinking to its knees. Water rushes in. Lights flicker, and then she goes. First a tilt, then a plunge, then a streak of bubbles, then nothing but darkness swallowing steel. The ocean roars, boiling and churning where the stern disappears. Survivors scream, their voices sharp and heartbreaking across the water. People in your boat flinch instinctively, as if the sea itself has grown teeth. The girl trembles against you. "Is it over?" she whispers. You swallow. The truth is heavy, but you owe her honesty. "The ship is gone," you say, "but not everyone is safe yet." She nods slowly, absorbing this with an eerie, quiet acceptance, the kind children sometimes have when reality is too big to process all at once. For a long time, no one speaks. The ocean settles back into its cold rhythm, as if nothing extraordinary just happened. The sky grows a little lighter. The lifeboats continue drifting in solemn procession, and one by one, the voices calling from the water begin to fade. Some historians argue that memory protects children by blurring the sharpest edges of tragedy. Others believe it preserves emotions with painful clarity. Watching the girl press her doll tight against her chest, you suspect both are true. You squeeze her shoulder gently. "We're going to keep going," you say. She nods again. Then she looks up at you with eyes far older than her years. "Will someone come for us?" This time, you answer without hesitation. "Yes." And though you don't know when, or how soon, or how many will still be alive by then, you make the promise anyway. Because sometimes, in the middle of the darkest sea, a promise is the only thing that keeps hope afloat. The sky above you shifts into a softer shade of blue, the kind of blue that hints at dawn, but still refuses to fully commit. It's like the universe is teasing you a little, offering just enough light to keep your hope awake, but not enough to warm your hands. The air grows quieter. Even the waves seem to understand that everyone here has run out of energy to fear them. You sit straighter in the lifeboat, your back stiff from hours of holding yourself together. The girl beside you is awake now, her eyes slightly puffy but calm. She doesn't say anything, just leans into your arm like you're the last stable thing in a world that has tipped sideways. You don't mind. If anything, her weight keeps you anchored in this drifting moment. Around you, the lifeboats cluster loosely, drifting like constellations that haven't decided what shape they want to form yet. People murmur quietly, low, exhausted conversations about family members, about what they remembered bringing, about what they wished they'd done. Some simply stare into the horizon as if willing the sun to hurry up already. You dip your fingers into the ocean. It's so cold it feels like touching metal. That metallic burn crawls up your arm, and you pull your hand back immediately, shaking off the sting. You remind yourself again that you're lucky to be in the boat at all. That thought always tastes a little bitter. Survival, historians often say, comes with its own complicated shadows, and scholars still argue about how much guilt shapes the memories survivors carry. You're starting to see where the debate comes from. The girl tugs on your sleeve. "Are we still moving?" she asks. You glance down. The boat is drifting, yes, but barely. The oars rest across the sides, untouched. Everyone is too tired to row. "We're moving with the ocean," you tell her. "She's doing the work for us." She squints at the water like she's evaluating whether the Atlantic deserves that much trust. Fair question. A man across from you clears his throat. He's wrapped in a blanket so thin it might as well be made of hope. "I heard," he says, voice raspy, "that the Carpathia was sent our way. She should be close." Someone else groans softly. Close could mean hours. Or minutes, the man offers, trying to sound optimistic, but the effort is so noticeable you can practically hear it squeak. No one argues. Hope is too precious to correct. You lift your gaze toward the horizon. The sky is definitely lightening. A faint stripe of gold shimmers at the edge of the world, like someone turned on the dimmer switch of a cosmic lamp. It's not bright enough to see land, but bright enough that your eyes stop aching against the darkness. The girl follows your gaze. "Sunshine," she whispers. The word feels like a spell. For a moment, people in the boat seem to breathe a little easier. You take a deeper breath too. The cold air fills your lungs, sharp but refreshing. You've been awake so long that your thoughts feel soft around the edges, like worn-out cloth. But the sunrise gives you just enough clarity to stay present. You focus on the rhythm of the waves, the gentle rocking beneath your feet, the way the cold air brushes your cheeks. Someone begins humming, just a low melody, shaky but strangely comforting. A tune that sounds like something you'd hear on an old porch in the American South. Soft, nostalgic, and just a little out of tune. No one joins in, but no one asks them to stop either. It's the kind of song that feels like a blanket for the soul. The girl sits up straighter. "I know that song," she says. "My mother used to hum it." Your heart pinches a little. She doesn't say where her mother is now. She doesn't have to. A gust of wind sweeps across the water, not harsh, just enough to ruffle your hair. You pull the coat tighter around both of you. The boat creaks slightly as it shifts. Every sound feels magnified out here. The soft splash of the waves, the occasional sniffle, the flutter of someone's sleeve. You look at the girl. Her eyes are locked on the sunrise. "Will the sun make us warm?" she asks. "Eventually," you say. "Sunshine always shows up eventually." A small smile appears on her lips, barely there but real. The woman 2 seats down from you leans forward. "You know," she says, "in the old days, sailors used to believe that dawn was a sign the sea forgave you for living another day." You glance at her. "Is that true?" She shrugs. "Depends on which historian you ask. They still argue about whether sailors actually believed half the things we say they believed." You chuckle softly. Even now you can appreciate a good academic dispute. The girl looks between you both, curious. "What does it mean?" "It means," the woman says gently, "that if the sun is coming up, it's a good sign." The girl nods, satisfied. The man with the blanket shifts forward, peering toward the horizon again. If Carpathia is coming, he murmurs, she'll come from the east. That direction? The girl asks, pointing. That's right, you tell her. She squints hard, as if trying to pull the ship into existence with sheer willpower. You almost laugh, kindly, because honestly, you'd try the same thing if it worked. Minutes pass, then more minutes, and then the woman beside you inhales sharply. Did you see that? You look up. The horizon wavers slightly, but you don't see anything out of the ordinary. What did you see? You ask. She shields her eyes. Something, a flicker of light. Your pulse jumps. Where? She points again. You narrow your eyes. The sun is still low, casting long streaks of gold across the water. There are reflections everywhere, shimmering like tiny lanterns. But then, just barely, you catch it. A speck, a glint, a momentary flash that doesn't belong to the sun. The girl grabs your arm. Is it the ship? You don't want to promise what you can't guarantee. You breathe slowly, focusing on the distant shimmer. I think, you say carefully, that something or someone is coming our way. Your voice is quiet, but it ripples across the boat like a blessing. People sit up straighter. Heads turn. The man with the blanket presses his hands together. The ocean carries you forward, gently, as if nudging you closer to salvation. The girl leans her head against your shoulder again. Wake me up, she whispers, when the light gets bigger. You nod. You don't take your eyes off the horizon, because now, finally, for the first time all night, the future feels possible. The horizon brightens slowly, like someone backstage is pulling up the lights by hand. You keep your gaze fixed on that faint shimmer, half hope, half guessing game, waiting to see if it grows, or if your tired eyes are just inventing miracles to stay awake. The girl dozes on your shoulder again, her breath soft and steady. You let her sleep. Dawn is creeping in one thin brushstroke at a time, and the world feels suspended, hushed, fragile, almost sacred. A few people in the boat whisper to each other. Others sit in exhausted silence, staring at the horizon as if they can force rescue into existence through sheer determination. Then finally, something changes. A sharper glint, a more defined flicker. Not sunlight, not imagination, not luck, metal. Look, the woman beside you murmurs. Her voice shakes, not from cold, but from something dangerously close to hope. You sit forward. The girl stirs but doesn't wake fully, just presses closer, as if she somehow senses the shift in the air. The man with the thin blanket leans over the edge of the boat. That's her, he whispers. That has to be her. Carpathia, a steamship pushing through the frigid Atlantic, brought out of her course by emergency signals and human stubbornness. The good kind, the life-saving kind. She is smaller than Titanic, humbler too, but she carries something Titanic didn't. The determination to reach survivors who shouldn't be alive, but somehow are. As the ship inches closer, the glint becomes a glow. The glow becomes a shape, and the shape becomes a towering shadow, a silhouette against the pale morning sky. Carpathia. She's really here. Someone starts crying, loud, unrestrained tears that shake through the early dawn. Another person laughs, a breathless sound that cracks halfway through. A few just exhale deeply, as if they've been holding that breath since midnight. You whisper, "We made it." The girl rubs her eyes. "Is it morning already?" "Not just morning," you tell her. "Help is here." She blinks, then sits up so suddenly she nearly knocks her head against your chin. "Where?" You point. She follows your finger, squints into the rising light, and gasps. It's a tiny sound, but it carries more relief than any adult's words could. The Carpathia grows larger by the minute, slicing through the water with steady determination. Her hull is dark, her smokestacks tall, and her deck already bustling with crew preparing for the surreal task of pulling hundreds of frozen, exhausted survivors to safety. For the first time since the night began, warmth blooms in your chest. The girl grips your coat. "Do you think they have hot chocolate?" she whispers, hopeful. You smile. "If they don't, I'll personally ask them to invent it." Around you, lifeboats begin waving. People lift arms, blankets, anything that can catch the morning light. Carpathia responds with a long, deep blast of her horn, a sound so powerful it vibrates in your ribs. The girl jumps a little. "What was that?" "That," you say, "was the sound of someone saying, 'We see you.'" The noise ripples across the water, echoing between lifeboats. Even the waves seem to perk up, moving with more purpose as Carpathia slows to approach. Historians still debate whether the rescue was a miracle, exceptional seamanship, or simply being in the right place at the right time. You suspect it was all three, because sometimes history refuses to pick one version and insists on being complicated. But whatever the cause, the feeling in your boat is unanimous. Someone is coming. Someone knows. Someone cares. As Carpathia draws alongside the lifeboats, crew members shout instructions. Ropes swing down. Ladders are lowered. Blankets appear along the rails like banners of welcome. The first lifeboat reaches the ship's side, and cheers go up when a child is lifted aboard. The girl sits up straighter, eyes shining despite her exhaustion. "Will they lift us too?" she asks. "Yes," you say. "Every single one of us." The boat shifts gently as the rowers begin paddling toward Carpathia. Their strokes are slow but steady, muscles trembling, hands raw, but fueled by something stronger than fatigue. As you draw close, you can finally see faces on the Carpathia's deck. Dozens of them. Crew members, passengers, people leaning over the rails with expressions ranging from horror to heartbreak to fierce determination. A few clasp their hands together as if praying. Others shout encouragement. "Hang on! You're almost here!" "We've got space, don't worry." It's overwhelming. It's beautiful. It's the sound of being saved. When your boat reaches the hull, a rope net drops down beside you. Two crew members take position at the top, ready to help each person climb. A man in your boat volunteers to go first. He grips the net with shaky hands and begins the ascent. His feet slip once, but the crew grabs him just in time. "Your turn," someone says gently. You look at the girl. She's already holding the doll tight to her chest. "I'll go first," you tell her, "so I can help you from the top." She nods bravely, though her lower lip trembles. You grip the net. The rope is rough and stiff against your palms. You climb carefully, legs trembling from cold and exhaustion. Halfway up, your foot slips too, but hands reach down, steady, warm hands, and pull you to safety. You clamber onto the deck. Blankets wrap around your shoulders immediately. Someone hands you a cup of something warm, tea maybe or broth, but you don't care. It's liquid warmth, and it sends a shiver through your whole body. Below, the girl hesitates at the net. A crew member calls down, "It's all right, sweetheart. Take your time." She climbs, slowly, carefully, determined. You kneel at the edge, reaching down as she nears the top. "I've got you," you whisper. She looks up. Her eyes are wide, shining, not with fear, but with relief so deep it feels ancient. You pull her into your arms. When her feet finally touch the deck, a wave of applause breaks out. It's not loud, but it's real, and it wraps around both of you like a second blanket. The girl buries her face against your coat. "We're safe," she whispers. You nod, throat tight. "Yes," you say. "We're safe now." But as you stand on the deck of the Carpathia, surrounded by survivors, by tears, by blankets and warm drinks and the hum of preparation, you know this moment is more than that. It's survival. It's history. It's the fragile, fierce resilience of people who refuse to disappear into the dark. And as the sun finally rises, full, golden, honest, you breathe in the warmth and let yourself hope again. The warmth hits you before the reality does. Not physical warmth, not yet, but the emotional kind that spreads across the deck of the Carpathia as more and more survivors are lifted aboard. It's subtle at first, like the lingering glow of a candle after it's blown out, but it grows with every new person who steps onto solid flooring. Relief, shock, gratitude, confusion. Every expression on this ship is some variation of, "We made it." You hold the girl's hand as you move deeper into the deck area, careful not to lose her in the crowd. Crew members hurry past with blankets, steaming mugs, and soft words. Passengers, people who just yesterday were complaining about the temperature of their soup or the firmness of their pillows, are now bending down to help strangers sit, offering their coats, murmuring encouragement. You guide the girl toward a quieter corner under the faint shadow of the lifeboat davits. She sits, clutching her doll, and you tuck a blanket around her shoulders. "You're shaking," she says. You laugh softly. Everyone's shaking. It's practically the theme of the morning. She gives a tiny smile. Then she looks around, eyes scanning the crowd with the earnestness of someone trying to understand how the world works all over again. "Are all these people from the ship?" she asks. "Most of them," you answer. "Some are from here, the Carpathia, but many are like us." Her voice gets quieter. "Do they all have someone waiting for them?" You swallow. "Some do." It's the kind of answer that only kids accept so gently, simple, incomplete, but enough. A crewman stops beside you, handing you a cup of something warm. You feel the heat seep into your numb fingers. "There'll be doctors inside," he says. "You can take the young one there when she's ready." You thank him, and he nods before being swept back into the flood of work, organizing, helping, comforting. The Carpathia has, in the span of an hour, turned from a passenger liner into a floating rescue center. You sip your drink. It's hot broth, salty, soothing, miraculous. You let the warmth settle in your stomach before looking out across the deck. An older woman paces in circles, wringing her hands. A man sits on a crate with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. A young sailor looks out over the water, jaw tight, as if memorizing the horizon. You hear snippets of conversation. "They said, the whole ship. I can't find my sister. Has anyone seen a girl with..." God help them. All those still. You adjust the girl's blanket and brush a stray hair from her forehead. "Do you want to go inside?" you ask softly. She shakes her head. "Not yet. I like the air." You nod. The air is different here, cool but alive. No longer the sharp, endless cold of the open lifeboats. There's movement now. Purpose. Life. Far across the deck, you spot a journalist scribbling notes furiously, papers flapping in the breeze. You can almost hear him forming headlines before ink even hits the page. American newspapers will devour this story. Titanic, the unsinkable pride of modern technology, sunk on her maiden voyage. Already you can imagine the articles, the illustrations, the public outrage. Some historians argue even today about how much of what was reported afterward was accurate and how much was sensationalized for sales. Given how loudly that journalist is scribbling, you suspect the debate won't end anytime soon. The girl leans into your side. What happens now? We're heading to New York, you tell her. We'll meet the world there. She processes that. Is it far? Far enough that you'll get to rest. You give her a reassuring smile, and for the first time since the night began, you truly mean it. A crew member walks past carrying a box labeled supplies, and your gaze drifts to the skyline, only just beginning to show behind you. The remaining lifeboats are still approaching, still unloading survivors, still carrying stories you'll never fully hear, but will somehow share forever. Then the Carpathia's whistle sounds again, long, deep, steady. This one isn't for locating survivors. This one, you realize, is for moving on, for leaving the disaster behind. You watch the water ripple beneath the ship as the engines rumble to life. The girl sits up straighter. "Are we going?" she whispers. "Yes," you say. "We're finally going." She looks out over the waves, eyes tracing the horizon where the sun now sits warm and confident. Will America be nice? You smile. America will be loud and messy and full of people who talk too fast and argue about everything. But yes, I think it'll be nice. You think of the crowds that will gather at the docks, of the reporters shouting questions before survivors even step off, of the families holding signs, searching desperately for familiar faces. Some historians say that the emotional shock on the pier was almost as overwhelming as the tragedy itself. Again, they still debate that, but you suspect the truth lies somewhere in that complicated middle ground. The girl tucks her doll under her chin. Will they let us rest first? You chuckle. They'd better, or I'll tell them off personally. She giggles, a small, fragile sound, but one that feels like the universe slowly stitching itself back together. A passenger from Carpathia approaches, offering you both pastries wrapped in paper. They're still warm, he says. We thought the children might be hungry. You thank him, and the girl accepts hers with both hands like it's some kind of sacred artifact. She takes a bite, and her eyes widen in outright awe. It's so good, she says through a mouthful. You take your own bite and nearly groan. It's the best pastry you've ever had, purely because you're alive to taste it. The ship groans softly beneath your feet as it picks up speed. The lifeboats fade into the distance behind you, then the empty water, then finally the faint memory of where the Titanic vanished. You pull the blanket closer around both of you. We're headed home, you tell her. She looks up at you, blinking in the golden morning light. Are you sure? You rest a hand on her shoulder. Yes, you say. For the first time all night, I really am. And as the Carpathia steams toward the American shore, carrying the weight of tragedy and the fragile spark of survival, you let yourself believe it. You're not just escaping something anymore. You're heading toward something new. The night sea was so calm, it seemed to be holding its breath, as if afraid to disturb what was about to unfold beneath its glass-smooth surface. Your ship drifted forward in slow, reverent silence, sails barely stirring. lanterns dimmed to a warm pulse of gold. It felt like entering a cathedral built from water and starlight. Then, faintly at first, you saw them. Small glimmers, delicate as fireflies, drifting upward from the depths. One by one, then in dozens, then in spiraling constellations, the lights bloomed beneath your hull. They brightened into shimmering orbs, some turquoise, some soft pink, others glowing like molten dawn. They moved as if guided by purpose, swirling in patterns that mirrored long-lost star maps. "These," Captain Mireille whispered beside you, "are the lantern keepers." You leaned over the railing. The glowing forms rose higher, revealing themselves not as fish or jelly or anything else cataloged in the natural world, but as gentle silhouettes, humanoid, fluid, shimmering as though carved from living moonbeams. Each carried a sphere of light cradled between both hands. "They keep watch over the memories of the sea," the captain said. "Every ship that has ever crossed these waters, every story that was never fully told, the lantern keepers guard them so they do not vanish." One of the luminous figures floated directly beneath you, raising its glowing sphere toward the surface. Within it, like a scene viewed through liquid glass, you glimpsed a young sailor on a stormy night long ago, laughing as he tied down a line, soaked to the bone, but unafraid. "A memory," the captain said softly, "perhaps of someone who lived, or someone who loved, or someone who was never found." The keeper released the sphere. It drifted up until it hovered just inches above the waves. For a moment, it illuminated your face with gentle warmth, like a lantern offered from one dreamer to another. Then, silently, it rose into the sky and dissolved into a single star. You watched it fade, feeling something within you settle into a quiet place you hadn't realized was aching. Tonight, the ocean was not a mystery to be solved. It was an archive, vast, patient, and tender. The lantern keepers slowly descended back into the deep, carrying untold stories with them. The sea closed over the last glimmer, gentle as a curtain falling at the end of a theater performance. You exhaled. The world felt softer. And as you returned to your cabin, lulled by the hush of the waves, a peaceful certainty wrapped around you like a warm blanket. Nothing truly cherished is ever lost. Not at sea, not in memory, not in you. Let the world be a little gentler tonight, and may your dreams be long and sweet. Good night.